Ugh, this tailstock's killing me. Good morning, welcome back to the shop. My name's Jamie. Today we're going to be taking a look at this. It's a boring bar attachment that goes into a mill. As with most things that I acquire, I picked it up. This was at a flea market, or a swap meet, I should say, at the local dragway, and I paid $5 for it. So looking at this and trying to kind of figure out more about it, right off I see that it's missing the dial. So that's what we're going to make today, is we're going to make a new dial that screws into this so that we can adjust it. It's really hard to see this on here, but it looks like it says it's a number 230, and hard to get out those initials. It might be T-P in some sort of a logo. Patent September 14th, 1915. So I'm not saying it's that old, but that's what they're claiming their patent date is. So if we break this down a little bit further, has the dovetail lock on the side that allows you to, after you've adjusted it in, you can lock it down. This is a 1/2-inch bore with a set screw. And then in here you have a threaded piece, which is what the drive screw will, again, adjust the bore, so you can adjust your diameter of the bore you're boring. But the screw for that is in the back. And we're going to spend a little bit of time on this because this is a pretty interesting spec. So let me show you what I found out so far. So through some trial and error, it looks like this is a 48 pitch thread. It's a little hard to show on the video, so I'm going to show you some images now. But the 48, it's very hard to see, but when I put it in there, I can feel that it's kind of locked in and it's biting on all those teeth. As opposed to when I put in a 44, if I put that in, it tends to slide out. You can kind of hear that too. It doesn't bite. And the same thing for the 40, which I thought was unusual. What I don't know is, here's the 40. And the 40 does the same thing. It just slides right in, and the 48 grabs nicely. And as you can see in the picture, the 48 does look to be the right pitch. Yeah, it kind of bites in. So what is that, thread diameter? If I'm going to be making a screw that goes into it, obviously I need to know what that is. So a couple of things that I'm checking here. So the inside diameter is about 0.29. This is reading 0.289. A couple of other ways that I'm checking this is I don't have thread gauges, not thread gauges, sorry, I don't have gauge pins. I have these less accurate transfer punches, but I've got this transfer punch, which this one doesn't want to go in at all. This is a 5/16. That'll come into play in a little bit. But this one, which is one size down from 5/16, goes in ever so slightly, and that's in and around that same dimension, 0.29. As I roll it, I get a little bit different dimension. This is not totally circular. It looks like it might be a little bit ovaled. But this goes in ever so slightly. So I feel comfortable that my inside diameter is 0.29. I've done some homework, and as I look at the Machinery's Handbook, really the only 48 pitch thread size that I can find is a 5/16 48. And when I go to the internal section for the minimum diameter, which would be the dimension that I'm measuring, it's somewhere between 0.29 and 0.295. So I do feel like I have this one identified as the right screw thread pitch. So that tells me it's a 5/16 48. And for 5/16, the major diameter is, of course, 5/16, which is 312.5 thousandths. So if I come back to my 5/16, let's check that. This is at just under 312 on the calipers. And I get 311. Yeah, well, 311 here on the micrometer. So it's close to the 5/16 that I'm looking for. And the reason why I just bring this one up is just visually, you know, I do get that sense that, yep, that does look like the right, you know, max diameter that I would be looking for. Let's see, anything else here to describe or show? Interesting how on this setup, the threaded portion looks like it was screwed in. You can see the screw marks here on the back. So that was done before it was machined for the dovetail. And then there's a plug here that's holding that, or it's another set screw. There looks to be a small flathead on that. I'm curious as to why they did it this way. Maybe to allow for different thread pitches. Quite honestly, a 48 thread pitch is peculiar because it doesn't divide nicely when I think about how the dial on the front will look like. You know, 1 divided by 48 is something like 0.0208 or something like that. It's not a nice clean number. Like if it was 40 threads per inch, then I'd be getting like 2.5, 0.025, which would be much easier to make a dial on the front. You know, for every turn, you'd go a certain distance. So I don't know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I really don't feel like, nor do I have the tools to change the thread pitch on this. So let's head to the lathe and see if I can make a screw that will thread into that. So I've got a test piece here that I made on the lathe. This is a 5/16 48 TPI, which is very, very tight. And I am having trouble when I go to thread this on. It would go on, but it felt like the threads in here were actually grooving, you know, the metal. It didn't go in smoothly. If I take a look at my insert tool, it just doesn't have a, even though it's a new one, the point on it is just not very sharp. There's a little bit of a radius there. And I think what's happening is it's rounding over the edges. So I have this piece of high-speed steel, and on the back side of it there's a very sharp point. And when I kind of run that through the groove, I was able to get the thread on a little bit better for those first 3 or 4 threads, and it definitely feels, you know, the way that it should. So I think what I'll do next is work on, this was designed with this rake here. I think what I'll do is grind it back so that I have that sharp point, and I'll use that to cut the grooves with and see if that gives me a better result. So back at it again with the high-speed steel tool. So I did make it fairly sharp, but just couldn't get it to groove couldn't get it to groove quite the way I wanted it to. And it does look like I've definitely messed up this inside part. So, a little frustrating to nothing works the first time, and I guess you just need to keep practicing to get better at it. So, I thought, well, I have these 5/16 taps and dies, but these are 24 thread, half of what I'm looking for, trying to get to 48. And then I realized I have this thread tapping tool, which has a very fine point on it. So it being a new day, I'm going to give this another try before I revert to the tap and die setup and see if I can't get this done with the small carbide tip. Here we go. $374. $376. So I'm 2 thousandths off. Oh, this tailstock's killing me. So one thing always seems to lead to another, right? You go in there into your project with, hey, I'm just going to go out and knock out these threads. Next thing you know, you're adjusting your tailstock. I have a test bar which has exact dimensions on this section and on this section, has a center on each end. So I'm going to put this between centers and measure the distance from one side to the other. First thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure that this dead center is concentric with the 3-jaw chuck. So I've got this compound set for 60 degrees, which is really 30 degrees on the marker. Everything's locked in, and we're going to true that up. So now I have a nicely dialed in dead center. I'm going to take the test piece and set that in here. Bring the tailstock over, I'll lock in the base of the tailstock, and we'll measure these distances here. It could just be surface finish. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. All right, I'm gonna call that 0. All right, and I'm at, 2 thousandths off here. So I need to bring the tailstock closer to me, about 1 thousandth. So I'm going to split that difference. I'm off 2 here, I'm 0 here. So I'm going to bring this over 1. On my tailstock, it's a 3-part process. There is a lock in the back, which can be a pain in the neck, because when you go to tighten it up, finally, it might move your results. So I'm gonna leave that snug. And then the 2 screws that are on either side of the tailstock, you need to work them in conjunction with one another. So I'm gonna loosen this one up slightly and see if I can't pull this back towards me. 1/1000. Looks like I need to loosen it up a little bit more. All right, there's my 1 thou. Now let's see if I can tighten everything up without losing that. Yeah, see how I go to tighten it and I'm losing it all. It all goes away. That part's very frustrating. So let's try it again. So I want to get back to 1. All right, so I got it moving a little bit. Let's come back to the end and just see. Okay, looks like I might have that one appropriately snug in the back. There's my 1. So now I have the movement screws locked in. Let's see if I can come back here and tighten up the locking screw in the back. Yeah, good. So that's where I want it to be. Let's see if it holds true. So rotate that through. I'm in and around -1. And I'm at, about +1/2. So I'm off by 1.5 thousandths. So I'm going to go ahead and do this one more time to try to lose that difference. And I'll come back to you with those results so you don't have to see me go through that again. All right, so now this is coming in at about 1/2 thou. Oh, I just moved it. Hang on, let's redo that again. Yeah, 1/2 thou. And bring it back over here. And I'm at about 1/2 to 1. Okay, so I'm about 1/2 thou at the most off at this distance. And since I'll be working within this tight distance, I shouldn't have the same kind of run out that I was looking at before. Let's get this assembly off, get the new assembly on, and check that out. So what the heck just happened here? I'm tightening the tool, and as I was tightening this, it just sort of unwound itself. Okay, so it looks like it's come out of the... All right, so maybe it's not a big deal, but this thread did get a little bunged up. looks like it was only threaded in by like one thread. Okay, so that's better. I thought that was weird. As I was tightening it, you got that, could feel that weird taffy. Feels like you're pulling on taffy. But I'm not sure how, but somehow this post bolt was only hanging in by one thread, and yes, it pulled itself out. That would make sense as to why it would pull out with only one thread in there, but why it only ended up with one thread, I don't know. Let's see how this feels now. So we're going to square it up. And I should be able to go, oh yeah, that feels much better. Perfect. All right, good, back in business. So I thought another way of just looking at this is to try to see, you know, how these line up. And just visually, they do look like they are right nose to nose, so I feel pretty good about that setup. All right, with everything set back up in the lathe, let's face off the end. Hit this with a measurement. So 367. It's 368.5. Still off. 368.5. 367. So I'm off 1.5 thou. I'm still getting fair bit of a taper here. So yeah, just about 1 thou, which I'm a little surprised within such a tight area I'm getting that type of a variance. I'm going to go ahead and thread this anyway so that I can practice that exercise a little bit. And let me know in the comments there's something going on here that I'm missing in regards to truing up the tailstock. It could be a worn ways problem in this area. Maybe the tool, maybe the tool is driving in or out a little bit. Not exactly sure, but I've chased this around now for a couple of hours. So I'm going to start making some threads so that I can practice that exercise. So I've got a bit of a problem. So with this small threading tool that I have for as far as a small bit, it's particularly wide, and I'm not able to get down into the point. So I think what I'm going to do is give myself a channel in here. And I realize that I've forgotten to get my outside dimension set. So we'll do that next. Okay, and so 368 minus 313 is 56 divided by 2 is 28. So I'm going to come in 25. So I'm at 313. $312. Interesting. So now in this case, I'm a little bit bigger on the outside than I am on the inside, about 1/1000. So as far as getting this tailstock aligned and whatnot, yeah, I'm not sure. All right, let's get some threading happening here. Make sure that this gives me enough clearance. Looks like I have that clearance I need. Yeah, that should be enough for this small depth of cut. So over at Machinery's Handbook, the exterior diameter wants to be a max of 3,117, so I'm going to call that 312. And the minimum diameter, which is inside the threads, is 2,869. I'm going to call that 287. So if I take 312 minus 287, means I need to come in 25, which means on my dial I need to come in 12 and a half. So let's do 12 and a half. We'll come at it probably in 4 or 5 passes. What I'm going to do is touch off, set this to 0, and then I'll use the compound to measure my progress towards that 12 and a half. Just double check, everything looks good. My tool height is way off because I adjusted to a new tool and have not yet set the tip to line up with the for the right tool height. So I'm going to back this off. I'm going to use the point here as my guide to adjust that tool height. So I'll loosen this up, rotate it over. Tighten this, and then loosen this guy up until it comes down to where I need it. So looking at these heights here, all right, that looks good. Bring it back over, square it up. The center back in. Test the center. Center looks good. Bring this back over. Check my clearances again. Everything there looks good. All right, now let's zero this out. I touched off there. Gonna bring my indicator to 0 on the cross slide. All right, we've got this guy at 0. So now I can come off of the cross slide, come over into my empty spot here, bring the cross slide back to 0. Get the backlash out. This one back to 0. I'm at 0 on the compound. I'm going to bring the compound in just barely anything so that I can check the pitch. Lock in the. There we go. Got it turned towards threads. Everything looks good there. We can engage on anything between 1 and 8. And we're going a little fast, so I'm going to bring that down. And so I'm curious now, just looking at the thread cuts in relation to the blue. I'm getting some variation That could be the surface finish that I hit that bluing with. But overall, that looks pretty good. Line it up with the gauge. And yeah, that looks good. 48. All right, let's slow this down. Let's get the back gears turned on. All right, so now that you get into these things and you look a little bit closer. So I've just done the one pass. I've re-zeroed the cross slide. I've gone in about 1 thou on the compound. I need to get in a total of about 12. But because of the way that I have this set up, I won't be able to test it. So like a real machinist, I might have to try the 3-wire method to measure the depth on this really small threads. I don't know, man. If this works out, I'm going to be surprised. But let's power forward and see how it goes. So I'm going to let this run as I move through the process. Again, I'm going to use the cross slide back at 0 and then adjust the compound for my step overs. So let's go in. I'm at 1. I'm going to move it in about 2 thou. We'll run that over. Back off the cross slide, bring it over, push it into probably 5 thou, and just keep that process moving back and forth. Okay, spring pass complete. Bring this back over. And bring this back to 0. And I'm in about 11, maybe 12. So let's see if I can measure that minimum pitch diameter. I'm sure that's not the right term. So I have this gauge here. It's a Meco gauge. Looks like it has from SPI. And the idea behind it, it's this triangle with 3 different size flats on it. So for 48 TPI, I use the narrowest flat, which is 5 thousandths. And then the idea is that you have this formula where you take the measurement over the gauge and the screw is equal to the diameter of the screw, the gauge dimension, which is stamped on here, and then the equal the number of threads per inch for N for this formula. And so that will give us the, what will that give us? I'm not sure. So let's measure those parts and pieces and see what shakes out. And depending on the class, gives you the tolerance. So let's lay out these measurements and see how it looks. So outside diameter, I'm at 312. I'm at 312.8. Which feels big. But that's what it is. Yeah, I don't know that this is going to fit. 312.8. Now I'm going to take and measure over the triangle. All right, that measures 650, 70, 69, 68. So 668. 668.7. So running down through the math on this, you've got this formula. The measurement with the gauge and the screw needs to be equal to the outside diameter plus the gauge dimension, which is on the gauge itself, minus this fraction. So I have measured 0.6687, the diameter of the screw that I've measured, which is on the top of the threads, 0.3128. On the gauge, you've got this little measurement. It says 0.3747 minus this set fraction of 0.7577 over n, and for 48 that's equal to 0.01578. So I'm going to round that to 8, 0.0158. So I get, when I run through the math on this, I get a difference of 0.03 of an inch, where I'm coming in, looks like under. No, sorry, this is my measurement. So I'm coming in over. And if I come back to this, for 48, you can be anywhere from 1 thousandths to 4 thousandths difference, if I'm reading this correctly. So I'm 3 thousandths difference. This might work. I have a little bit of hope and optimism. I'm no Adam Booth who can nail threads all day long, but I'm going to trim off the end of that threaded portion and see how it looks. So it rolled up on top, and now won't let the tool go. So we'll loosen the tool up. And let's just take that, yeah, we'll let it come right out. Okay. So this guy wasn't in tight enough. Let's put this back in and try it again. Broken through, let's see. Yep. Alright, we're all set. Loosen that up, and there that goes. Alright, let's give this guy a try. So it gets a little tight right about there. Let's see, how far in is that? So I go in about 1/4 of an inch. It starts to tighten up. Let's try this side. So it's going in, and then I get to a little bit of a, again, it starts to tighten up again. Hard to tell, but okay. Could be something in here. Could be something on the threads. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to skip over. I'm going to part that off again, and we'll try the next section of it, see how that looks. All right, let's check this section. Okay. Goes on nicely, and then starts to get tight again. So I think there's something on the inside of this piece. The threads inside here are definitely causing it to, well, the sample size of 2, I'm getting similar results where it threads on nicely and then doesn't want to thread on anymore. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece, I'm going to grind a few grooves in it to almost make it like a tap so that I can clean out the threads inside here. How's that sound? So simple enough. I just brought this over to the Dremel and cut some grooves in it. See if that could act as a little bit of a tap. I don't know, could be a crazy idea. Let's see. Okay, so there's that tight spot. And this isn't hardened, so I do need to be careful. Let's try going in, and I didn't got to make something on the other side to kind of grab it. Yeah, there's that tight spot again. You know what? Let's get a little bit of this Tap Magic lubricant on there. Why not? Get some resistance here. Just working it around. Just want to take a look. Still giving me some pretty good resistance. Trying to keep this cardboard here so it's easier for you to see. I don't know if that's just more of a pain in the neck for me or not. It's definitely a pain in the neck for me, but hey, anything for my viewers, right? So still getting a fair bit of resistance. Let me pull this out and then go on the other side. Let's head over to the workbench. How about that? Okay, we'll get serious now. Yeah, it's picking up you can see it's where it's deforming the threads here. So there's something in there that's catching. And let's hit it from the other side. And it goes in nice for that first bit, and then it starts to get tight. All right, I'm starting to lose those threads. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this again and use this portion. Again, it's not hardened, so it's doing the best that it can, but let's see if I can get into it. I'll part off this piece and then just use the new, right, an unused portion. All right, here we are, freshly back from the lathe. Let's see if this will start. It's got a little bit of a lip on it. Okay. I tell you, once it gets in there, those threads, the threads I cut came out pretty well. I'm happy with that. I do think that there's something wrong on the inside of the boring head. So let's use a lot of, how about this? We use a lot of fluid and we'll go back and forth. Take this slow. So there, it's biting. Go like an eighth of a turn and unwind it. Hopefully we can push through whatever's causing that issue. All right, so let's see how that looks. Yeah, it's doing the same thing. So it's rolling over those threads. Okay. So there's something in here that's not playing nice. This is not strong enough to cut through it. Could buy a tap. Might have to do that. I just don't think I can harden these threads. You know, let me just try that. Some quick research on the internet tells me this is not hardenable. So what I've done is I've taken off those, the damaged threads were somewhat, why would they be behind the leading threads? I'm not sure. So I thought I would just take them right out of the picture and see if this will make its way through. Because maybe I was just getting hung up on some bad threads that I had cut. And wow, it does look to be that way, doesn't it? Yep, I'm getting all the way through. So that tells me that the interior threads are okay. It also tells me that I've made some threads that are good, but maybe they were inconsistent in their diameter, which is what was causing the problem. Okay, that's it. my plan for this is to get this set screw threaded down in and Loctite it in. I don't have the capabilities at this point to kind of make that Allen head directly into the brass. So I'm going to drill that through and tighten it in. Well, if nothing else, I hope that I have been kind of honest along the way that this is the first time for me for a lot of these projects, and this has been a long day just to make this thing. And you know, it really isn't, I did a lot of trial and error as opposed to measuring and being precise. Definitely got a little frustrated along the way. If that's ever happened to you, then feel free to let me know. If it's never happened to you, let me know that as well. So, you know, I learned a lot going through this project. But let me dry fit this first. Which is the goal, right? But I guess it's frustrating sometimes to kind of go through that. Okay, so that fits in nicely. And we're going to put a bunch of Loctite on this. This part of the boring head should not need to be, you know, really reefed on too hard. So just some blue Loctite should be enough to hold this guy in. So there we go. I did like the beveled kind of edge that I put on this, and then maybe another time I'll find a way to get some, using an indexing head to put some marks on it, some measurement marks. But for right now, I'm going to move on to just testing it out in the boring head to make sure that it works. Right, so the idea here is that we can turn this in and adjust the boring head, which it does appear that that is working. And then we can loosen it. And that's pulling the boring head back towards the middle. All right, let's clean this thing up. That I know we can do. All right, and I forgot to mention I've gone back old school with my iPhone camera because the GoPros are just not working today. So it's just par for the course. But that's all good. This was a $5 part that I picked up at that swap meet. And it is now going to be a serviceable tool. So it has that going for it. Let's reassemble and wrap this project up. Those threads were definitely a challenge, but I guess I'm happy that I didn't default back to buying just a tap and a die. So it's always a bright spot. All right, here it is in its final form, doing what it's supposed to do, sliding over. So it is the end of a long day, but the project's complete. Thanks for hanging in there with me. Not all journeys are straight lines. This was an example of one of those things today. So overall, I'm satisfied that I have a working tool. I think set my own standards a little bit too high given my experience level for how to do this. But again, learned a ton along the way. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. Till next time, we'll see you later. Good luck in your home projects.